This isn't about a single murder. It's about a pattern of disappearances. One that stretches across decades and across hundreds of miles of remote road. This is Highway 16 in British Columbia, a long, lonely highway that cuts through dense forests, towering mountains, and isolated communities. On the surface, it looks quiet, peaceful even, but it carries a dark and heavy name, the Highway of Tears. Since the late 1960s, but especially from the 1980s onward, dozens of women and girls have vanished or been murdered along this very road. A shocking number of them were Indigenous. Many were young, and for many, their last known act was hitchhiking. Some of their bodies were found, but far too many were never seen again. The official numbers are debated. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police acknowledge at least 18 cases directly linked to the highway. But Indigenous groups and families of the missing say the true number is much, much higher, with some estimates exceeding 40. These women and girls came from small, tight-knit communities, places with very limited public transport, where hitchhiking wasn't just a choice, it was often the only way to get around. This was especially true for Indigenous women, who were already facing systemic disadvantages. The story unfolds along a more than 700-kilometer stretch of road between the towns of Prince George and Prince Rupert. For long sections, there's no cell phone signal, no streetlights, and vast distances between towns. It's the kind of place where if something terrible happens, there's no one around to hear it. One of the first known cases dates back to 1969. Two 14-year-old girls, Monica Ignace and Judy Hill, were on their way to a friend's house. Their bodies were later found. Their murders were never solved. As the years passed, the pattern continued. In 1974, 19-year-old Helen Betty Osborne was abducted and brutally murdered. The people responsible were known in the community, yet it took over a decade for charges to be laid. Her case became a glaring symbol of a justice system that was failing. Then came the 80s and 90s, and the disappearances accelerated. In 1989, 16-year-old Tracy Marie Williams vanished. She was last seen hitchhiking. Her body was found months later. No one was ever charged. A year later, in 1990, 16-year-old Ramona Wilson disappeared near the town of Smithers. Her remains were discovered the following year. In 1994, 30-year-old Gail Waversneck went missing after her car broke down and she had to hitchhike. Her body was found near the highway. Again, no arrest. The pattern was undeniable. Young women, often Indigenous, last seen along Highway 16, later found dead or simply vanished without a trace. Their families begged for help for years. But for a long time, police treated the cases as isolated incidents. They blamed the victims' lifestyles. They blamed the act of hitchhiking. Resources for investigations were scarce, and crucial evidence disappeared with the passage of time. It wasn't until 2006, after immense public pressure, that the RCMP finally launched Project EPANA, a special task force dedicated to investigating the Highway of Tears cases. Millions of dollars were spent, and hundreds of tips were followed. But still, there were very few answers. The name of one notorious killer, Robert Picton, surfaced repeatedly. The pig farmer was convicted of murdering 6 women and confessed to as many as 49. Police investigated, but no solid evidence ever linked him to most of the cases along Highway 16. Another suspect was serial killer Cody Legbukoff, who was arrested in 2010. He was convicted of 4 murders, and for a moment, some hoped he was the man responsible for the terror on the highway. But again, there was no clear connection to the earlier disappearances. This led to a terrifying possibility. There wasn't just one killer. There were many. It was a perfect storm of a vulnerable population, a remote and dangerous highway, and decades of opportunity for predators. Finally, in 2015, a national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls was launched. The findings were devastating. The report pointed to systemic racism, police neglect, and institutional failure as major contributing factors. Families testified that they were ignored, that cases were mishandled, and that important leads were dismissed. The inquiry concluded that these deaths were not random. They were the predictable result of a system that had failed to protect Indigenous women and girls for generations. Today, some limited bus services have been implemented along Highway 16, a change that came after decades of activism. But for many, it's too little, too late. Countless families are still waiting for remains to be found, waiting for arrest to be made, waiting for a justice that may never come. Some mothers have gone to their graves without ever knowing what happened to their daughters. The road is still open. Cars still pass through those same forests and that same fog. And somewhere along that highway, the truth is still buried. The Highway of Tears isn't just a road. It's a national tragedy and a chilling warning. And until every single victim is accounted for, this story is not over. Thanks for watching, and please consider subscribing for more stories that need to be told.